Good morning, all. Nice to see you this morning. This is our last brunch of the year. I know, isn't it terrible? We have to break for the summer. We've had, I think, a very good season. We have 16 presentations. A couple of those were over at Beth Abraham. I think we had a pretty diverse group of speakers. Our committee is going to meet now probably after the festival. But if you have any ideas, if you don't know me, my name is Rick Goldberg. I'm also the treasurer. Let me know. And I've had a nice conversation with Marcia about getting input from the Adult Education Committee. And so we would soon begin our planning for next year. Speaking of my committee, I would like to recognize them now. Some of them are here, some of them are baking. So when I call your name, raise your hand. Vicki, thank you. Carol Graff. Catherine Cooper's not here, she's obviously had some medical issues. Peggy Weller, here. Steve Renas, and Sarah Faust is baking, and Danielle Zeisloft, who's a religious school teacher. So they've done a terrific job. It's certainly a team effort to put these on, and I appreciate their help very much. Yeah, give them a round of applause. The other thing I want to do is remind you of one of the next big events. I guess we have the annual meeting's coming up. Karen, do you know when the date of the annual meeting is? 31st of May, Thanksgiving. But then after that, the second Sunday of June is our Jewish Cultural Festival. Is this 11th? But is it the 11th time? Yeah, okay, 11 squared. So we certainly want you to show up. We always need volunteers. We always need sponsors, so you can go to the website and sponsor, because this is our one and only fundraiser for the year. And you can also pre-order baked goods and buy raffle tickets, all online. So we're plugging that. It's been terrific in the past, and I know it's going to be terrific this time. And if you come, one of the things that I do is I'm the co-chair of the parking committee. So I might be the first face you see when you come in here, and we'll get you parked, and we have go-karts to bring it to the building or to the festival. So we're doing all the planning for that and everything else going on with the festival. So at this point, let me bring in somebody that we all know and that we all love, is our Rabbi Karen. And she and others are going to share their experiences for when they went to Israel earlier this year. Rabbi Karen.
Good morning, everyone. I feel like it's not just me, it's me and half of all of you, which is to say that I think this was a meaningful trip for those who went, and we are continuing to learn from one another more and more what this trip meant to us and how it impacted us. As you can see, there are some tables up here, so if any of you who were on the trip and would like to speak, will want to come forward and sit up here, you're welcome to. If you just want to have the other microphone and we can pass it around, you can do that as well. Or actually, our mother Hannah is with us this way. So we'll do that. You can sit up here. Oh, we can test everybody. All right. So I know one of you has already been counting to see how many of us are there. If you look at the picture, There were 20 of us who were able to make it for this trip. Unfortunately, we had 21 to start with, but one of them was nice enough to stay home when we found out he was sick with COVID. We're proud of him for that decision. And it's thankful because none of us got sick, which apparently is not the norm for lots of these Israel trips. The first thing I was asked to look at was our itinerary and what it was that we were hoping to accomplish. So I saw this as sort of a part 2 to the first trip that we took that was 2019, I believe it was. And we really went up to the north that time to try and see as much as we could. But 51% of the land in Israel is actually south. And so we have a lot of the country that we didn't get to. And it's not quite the same as far as, the big metropolitan type of areas, but it has such a wealth of information and history that we really wanted to look at it. If you look at the screen, does it allow me to point? It does, okay, perfect. We started out in Tel Aviv. We went, down to Jerusalem. We stopped in Beit Kuvri, and over here was Kibbutz Aza. Made our way down to, we passed Sde Boker, somewhere in here, I forgot to highlight it. Mitzpeh Ramon, Kibbutz Lotan, Kibbutz Yokata, Timna Park, Eilat, over to Petra, and then we flew back from here up to Tel Aviv and headed home. So you can sort of see why it's not the northern part of the country, because you can't even see the northern part of the country. When we were looking at ideas, and I have to thank Teresa for working with me to try and create what I think was a meaningful experience, was we were looking at different types of elements that would help us to better understand Israel in the context of both its history and its modern life. So we were looking at different things, and you'll see them as they come through the days. All the days don't necessarily have the same message, but overall, this was how I sort of saw it. When we look at the formation of the state, you'll hear a little bit about each of these places. We saw the Ayalon Institute. We learned about Tel Aviv and the first settlers who went there. We looked at Mount Herzl, some of the visionary ideas on how the state of Israel was created. Yad Vashem, the Ani Museum, you'll hear more about this. Again, what is it? It used to be Ani, by the way. Has anyone been to the Diaspora Museum in Tel Aviv? It's now known as the Anu Museum. They've redone it. And it really, you'll see more about it, but Anu means us, or we. And so we hopefully will see ourselves in the story of Israel as it's being told. Going back in time, I'll go over to the biblical locations. And we have the Jaffa port. Jonah, you know what that was, right? Jonah set off for Nineveh from there. Just making sure he knows that. The Elah Valley. Anyone want to share what that was? And remember, David and Goliath. That's right. Jerusalem, or Jerusalem. The Sea of Reeds, obviously, Milcha was certainly feeling the presence as we were there. We went to make sure we had things from the temple period as well. We went to Beit Kuvri, which was an archaeological dig. We visited the Western Wall tunnels and Timna Park, which you'll hear more about. It was the first copper mine, I believe. And that all took place at the time of the Second Temple. The land itself, so not just talking about the people in it and the things that they've created, but really the land itself. We were able again to see the Elah Valley, the Negev, Machtesh Ramon, you'll hear a whole lot about that. Kibbutz Lotan, I put that on there because it specifically is an eco-kibbutz, focused entirely on the land and the environment. Again, at the Red Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. And only one of us actually swam with both of them. You can take a guess. Looking at modern Israel, we went to the Paris Peace Center, which was an innovation type of museum to talk about the many discoveries that Israel has made. Kfar Aza, which was an opportunity for us to talk about security, being on the border with the Gaza Strip. The Ilan Ramon Center, Yad Kashish, you'll learn more about as well. Lifeline for the Aged, which is specifically one of the ways that the community supports itself for the elderly in the community. Capitol Hill, where a room where things happen. Our Women of the Wall experience, dealing with some of the intricacies between more Orthodox communities and the liberal communities. And spending Shabbat at Kehilat Har-El, which was, again, having the opportunity to be with a Reform community in Israel. And their cantor, who was a classmate of mine, before he decided he wasn't going to come home with the rest of us, and he made Aliyah, shares a lot about what that experience is for them in the progressive community. Taste of Israel, because you can't just go and not eat the food. So it's one of the favorite things, and you'll notice in a couple of slides that Jonah really enjoyed the shawarma. We had shawarma 8 times. 9, of course. So that meant I had shawarma 9 times, just pointing that out. But we also went to the Levinsky Market, Machane Yehuda, which is the outdoor market in Jerusalem, Shukash Pish Pashim, which literally means like the fly, I'm thinking Pish Pashim are flies, what do you call it? Like a flea market. But anyway, Kibbutz Yotfata, it is one of the best dairy places in Israel. Most of the time when you go to the store, you'll find that they have dairy there, but if you can actually go to the kibbutz where they make it, that was exciting for us. So I have a little bit of a triptych as far as what were the things that we did. The first thing we did is we went to the Ayalon Institute, Arming for Independence. This was actually an opportunity. Rabbi Sophie came to visit us because it was close to where he lives. We had our very first stop was to say hello to him, I guess. This was a secret ammunition factory that produced millions of bullets for Jewish forces fighting for a Jewish state, the end of British rule over Palestine. I want you to see these pictures because these are really cool. If you look over here, does someone from the trip want to explain what this is? Thank you. There's a microphone right next to you. It's more interesting with different voices.
Hello? This was one of the coolest places because on top it looks like just another kibbutz, right? But you find out that way back in the beginning, before the war, they were preparing. And they brought in metal, I think they said they needed the metal for lipstick cases.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know where they got the gunpowder, but they had a whole factory underneath this bakery and laundry. And they were able to have almost half of the population of that kibbutz ignorant, totally ignorant of what they were doing underground. So that's part of it.
Yeah, it was, so right up here, this is what it looked like from the outside. This was, over here is where they would line all the laundry out to dry. And underneath it would be this little hole, right? I can't do that. Right there where this machine is, where you can see he's pointing to it over here. They wanted something that would be loud enough to cover the sounds of things happening underneath it. So that was the tumbler for the laundry. But there was one button that they could use to move it, and it led to this teeny tiny little staircase. And beneath that is where we would come down here, where we have all of the machines down there where they were making these bullets. And it was with great danger to them, not only because of the risks they were taking, the British looking down their noses, but also because they were in this room with all of this gunpowder and flammable substances, and it was just not a safe place for them to be, but they all did it And again, more than half of the quotes didn't know that it was happening, it was right underneath their noses. This is the room where, as far as what they could see, this is all you could see, and it was probably that building back there, but this whole part with all of the cement is as far as it went underneath. It was huge, and it was actually, if you can see, I believe that they were from, what do you call those, the ship containers, weren't they, that they used the sides of that? So trying to, again, reduce the amount of noise. You can see that I have a couple bits of commentary from Jenny Thompson. She can't be here, but she posted throughout the time, and I thought she did a really nice job, so you can follow along with her commentary. So the first thing we did after we did that is we went and got to our hotel, which was right on the beach. So we had the lovely opportunity to remind ourselves that it is such a beautiful place along the Mediterranean, a little fish, beautiful sunset, and this is our terrific guide, Mookie. Mookie is the same guide that we used when we went last time. He's from South Africa. He is probably the best guide that I've ever been with. He really was able to address some of the difficult questions in a way that was helpful. I found something new that I appreciated about him this time that I hadn't last time, which was that he's really good at explaining difficult situations to children, or at least young men, because there were some times when we were in precarious situations with security, and he was able to help calm and explain the situation in a way that I thought was very helpful. So we immediately left Tel Aviv, but we came back. We went to Jerusalem. We had the opportunity to again go to the Anu Museum, which is the next iteration of the Diaspora Museum. Because it's dedicated to telling their story of the Jewish people, that would be all of us, and representing our diversity, highlighting creative works, cultural riches, different periods of time. I will show you what that is in just a moment. Then we had our ethnic tasting tour. Again, part of this is about not just the sights, but the sounds and the tastes. And then we went towards Jerusalem for Shabbat. I love this because as we're talking about tastes, everyone always says the best thing about Israel are their breakfasts. So here's an example of what a breakfast looks like. One of the smaller breakfasts, actually. Jenny tells us that it was just, she lived there just for the food. It was so good. But we visited the Anu Museum. After that, we had a great walking tour where we ate our way through cities, restaurants, and spice shops. So while I'm about to switch, does anyone else want to add something to that?
In that pot up there of the green stuff, it had eggs in it, and it is amazing.
So the Anu Museum, this is a picture where it is, has everything from different time periods, including modernity. If you look at this, this was the actual lace, how would you call it? Collar of Ruth Bader Ginsburg that she had promised before she passed that she would give it to the Anu Museum. We have Lenny Bruce and the Soup Nazi and a little bit of Rodney Dangerfield, just reminding us of the extreme diversity of the Jewish people. I thought I put it in there, but I must have taken it out, but there was, what's his name, from KISS.
Gene Simmons. Gene Simmons.
Oh, yeah, Gene.
But his Hebrew name was like Chaim. Oh well, anyway, he signed a guitar in Hebrew, and it was pretty cool because he's Israeli. Here we go to the Levinsky Market. If you have never gone and seen these spices, don't even think about going to like a spice store here because it's not the same. There's overwhelming amount of culture that you find in there, not just because of the sense and the history, but there are various meals, and we tried one in particular with, it was lentils and rice that had been the staple, I want to say, of the Muslim community. But we learned about various recipes that were really part of the culture. We had a great tour guide who took us around and introduced us to a fish Monger, who brought us all different types of fish and desserts and salatine, our salads. What else did we have? Oh, we went to see the man with, it was a spice shop, and he gave us crystals. Excellent. So if you want to see the crystals that he gave us that are, I believe, to ward off the evil eye, Vicky is warding it off for all of us. That evening, we spent at Bodney-Halasz. As you can see, they gave us the honor of addressing the congregation, as well as Teresa was able to light the Shabbat candles for them. One of the things you'll notice, this is streamed. So Friday mornings, what I like to do to get ready for Shabbat is I stream their services and listen to their music. It sort of gets me right in easier. If any of you ever are interested, I'm an overseas member of the congregation, and if you ever are interested in following along just to see what service is like, they are online. We had the opportunity to talk to him in our hotel, and he spoke to us a lot about what was happening in the States, especially with regards to the Supreme Court issue. And do any of you want to take the opportunity to speak about that a little bit? Carol.
I thought what was interesting, which is almost pertaining to what we do right now here, is that there's an issue going on in Israel about the changing of the courts and whatever. And the rabbi told us that he and many others would be going out to demonstrate the next day. And to bring it up to last week, when Rabbi Sofian was here, he explained to some people who were visiting our congregation that Israel is a true democracy, that they have at this point 500,000 people going out every week protesting, not looting, protesting what's going on in their Knesset. So that it brings home to us that people are really interested in what's going on. They're very much invested in their country.
And you were telling me on Friday, what would that equal to in our own community?
It would be like 20 million people of our people going out and protesting every week.
That was, when you said that was pretty astonishing. Yeah, they had invited us, the Reformed community was meeting for Havdalah and then going to this protest rally. This was the second one, I think, at that time, and it's been going continually since then and continuing to grow in size. We will talk a little bit more about that political situation, but I'm hopeful that you all are aware that there's something going on right now in Israel. Okay. You don't understand it, we can help. We'll try and figure that out a little bit. We had our free day in Israel, in Jerusalem, and so we all sort of went our own way. I took some of the pictures from people's Facebook pages, but I love the idea that you can see so much diversity. So we have from the Arab Shuk, which of course would be open on Shabbat. Carol Forshaw is a force to be reckoned with when it comes to bargaining. We were in this really cool artist shop, and I think she got it for less than half the original price. So next time I'm shopping with her. You can see in Jerusalem that they have, this is the Cardo, there's ancient ruins just in the middle of the street, just like anywhere else. And just like this, you look over and you see some burnt houses from thousands of years ago. Over here, this is my favorite jeweler, Hedaya. She's closed because it's Shabbat. But you can see how empty it is. You'll see on other days that we're there that it's really a very crowded area, but on Shabbat, everything is quiet. Last time we were there, we went to the artist colony. That's where David Moss has his studio. Unfortunately, while we were in Israel, he was here in the United States, but we wanted to take a picture and remember him too. I believe that is around the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Some people wanted to have the opportunity to look at sites that we weren't necessarily going to ourselves, including the Christian community. Over here, we have a view someone took from the Israel Museum. How many of you guys went to the Israel Museum? Yeah, you guys love that. If you want to add something to that, you can. This is just the view from my window in the hotel. You can sort of see over, and this is, of course, the walled city of Jerusalem. This is the rest of the city, just, it's mingled right in there. Did anyone want to add something about your free day in Jerusalem or how you spent it? Yeah, can you handle the?
I'll talk. It was so interesting to me.
Use the mic.
It was interesting to me because this was the first time I went there, that there's not that separation of church and state, for one thing. And so on Friday at noon, it's like everything shuts down. Kids don't go to school, and they go half day, it all shuts down, and Shabbat starts. And they honor Shabbat from then until sundown on Saturday. It would be sundown on Saturday. But it was interesting to me because the shops were closed, and immediately when it's sundown again, everything opens up. And it was just very fascinating. And that last picture there is wasn't it a train terminal or station? It was the first one. And since they didn't use it, it then became vendors where we could go there, and they had different things there, like they had the fresh pomegranate juice, they had people selling and there were restaurants in there and things. And to me, that was very fascinating. And you could, I'm a people watcher, as is my husband. You could see the people and the things. The thing that impressed me the most about this, that maybe we don't see as much, is their absolute devotion to family. That when Shabbat comes, families are together. And you see that nucleus family that I think that in the United States that we've lost. And perhaps that's why we have some of the issues that we have and things. So anyway, I just found that all fascinating because I had not been introduced to that.
Did anyone else want to talk about their experience that day or the Israelis?
I think we had two Shabbat. Isn't on dinner at the hotel.
Yes.
And what fascinated me is that families came to these hotels, and these hotels, which had big dining rooms, were packed. And each one was doing, each family was doing its Shabbat. So we said our prayers, the next one said his prayers, so the table next to me said, and it's almost chaos, and then you go and get your dinner. But it's, as you said, the families were together. It's just so amazing how huge, it wasn't 1, 2, 3, it was 20 or 30 people coming together sitting for dinner.
It's really an excellent way of handling it. How many of you have those big Thanksgiving dinners where you're like, wow, we should really just go out because who's going to have room for all of that? That's like Shabbat for every week. There were these enormous families, especially in the religious communities, where it just is so many people. It was far easier for them to make reservations at the hotel and to do Shabbat there and walk to their homes. And a lot of people, obviously, who were coming from out of town. But the Shabbat, you were talking specifically about the time, right, and living by Jewish time. And so one of the things that each of the hotels has is right before Shabbat, they have a table out with little tea candles, so that anyone who wants to light the candles for Shabbat has the opportunity. When we were at our second hotel for Shabbat, they came by and delivered all of us a little honey cake to celebrate Shabbat with. So it's really a beautiful way. If you think about it, we never think, what would it look like in a world where we went by Jewish time?
But the other thing too is that I found interesting is that, you know, it had to be costly to do that, for families to come and stay at the hotel, and some of them have their services within the hotel. But that was not the issue, the money spent. It was, the importance was family and being together as a community. And I was so impressed by that.
And at each of the tables, they would provide the wine and the challah, make sure that everyone in their own little communities could do the blessings together. Ours was the best because, of course, we had our Chazan who was leading it for us from Gilad. So after that first day that we got to explore Jerusalem on our own, we had more of an exploration with Mookie. We went to Yad Kashish, and I know that there's a lot to be said about that, so when I show some pictures, you guys can help make commentary. We drove past the Capitol Hill, we went out and were able to see the Knesset, have a great picture, a couple of you. And then we went to the open air market of Machane Yehuda. So we'll look at some of those pictures, which is far more exciting, although the day was still busy. We went to Mount Herzl, the National Cemetery, I'll talk about that too. And then in the evening, one of the things that we really loved about this trip is that it was educational. The focus was to teach and to learn and to understand. And so when we're sitting there looking at the Capitol, trying to understand about what's actually happening inside of it, Mookie did a great job, but it was wonderful to be able to hear from a professor at the university who was able to really explain to us what was going on and how we got to where we were in the situation that we can explain a little bit more in a bit. So Jenny says it best. She says, today we learned how Israel takes care of their elderly population that's below the poverty line. Such a special place, made her fall in love with Israel even more. You'll see each one of these, she's fallen in love with Israel even more. I love it. When I was in college there as a junior at Hebrew University, this was actually the location of the, where I volunteered during that year. And it was a great opportunity because most of them don't speak any English and really got me to use my Hebrew and learn things like scissors that I hadn't known. Miss Mariah, by the way. Shulani taught me that. These people there, what I know, one of you guys wanted me to mention, I can't remember if it was Carol Graff or Carol Forshaw. One of you were saying how they determined what crafts these people would do based on their skills. It wasn't that they all of a sudden said, okay, well, we've got these crafts, this is what we make. Do we have any of you who are able to do that? It was rather, what are your skills? And then we'll build a craft and we'll build something that we can sell around that. Trying to provide opportunities for them to remain a contributing part of the community, even when oftentimes they would be overlooked. So over here, we saw some people who were working on the ceramics.
She was a math teacher.
She was a math teacher? Yeah, you had a long conversation with her.
She's very nice lady. Had English, and her family lived in New Jersey. Part of the family lived in New Jersey.
Oh, I'm sorry. She was a math teacher, and she was talking about how her son and grandkids lived in New Jersey in the United States. But she had very good English, and she was wonderful to talk to.
Over here in the ceramics, there was also, I think Sarah and Lonnie were here, they would tell you that they bought a little airplane. This is not quite done yet, but they had all sorts of things, from things for children to the matches that we now have in our sanctuary. And when it comes to the metal work, you can see here that they are still able to trace the different patterns, I guess. And beautiful stuff. I think, so, are any of you wearing your earrings? Some of you? Okay, good. A lot of beautiful things. Scarves, yes, you're wearing them. So anytime you can have someone who says, I was in Israel and I brought you something from Yad Kashish, you'll know that not only did they bring you something beautiful and Israeli, but something that helped to contribute to the society. I would love for you guys to explain a little bit more about what you learned regarding, from the perspective of how this protects those in that community. Because I would want to share, I know Carol, you had said you wanted to talk about that, so I wanted to take the opportunity.
Although I can talk about almost anything. Being of the same age group as these individuals who are working, this facility provides a place for them to go, a reason to get up in the morning and have something constructive to do. They end up having a meal there and their food needs are sort of taken care of. They have access to medical care. They have the companionship of other individuals that they can work with. It is just such a wonderful kind of facility, even if they didn't make beautiful things, which get sold, that we could emulate in this country for the old people who don't really have a reason to get up in the morning. And this was a place that's what really hit me the closest.
I was also moved at how they handled COVID, if I remember.
That I don't remember.
You want to speak to that?
During COVID, of course, they had to shut down the center because everything was shut down. But they talked about how they made sure the people were taken care of within their homes. And they made sure that they had the meals and things like this. So it wasn't like, well, we shut you down, sorry about your luck. No, and they talked about the credibility of a place like this was more apparent after COVID because they saw the people who did not come to do these things. Some of them lost skills and some of them lost mobility and were not able to return and things. And some people who came back who couldn't do the same things, they were afraid they could no longer come and they said, oh no, we'll find something else for you to do. So it was nice, and you saw people arriving and immediately they went and ate when they first came and things, and they would get a meal later on. But this also supplements their income. They get paid to come here. And some of them have very little, and they're not all, some of them came from like Ukraine or Ethiopia.
A lot of immigrants.
Right, a lot of immigrants participate in this, and it helps them supplement the money they need to sustain their life there.
I was saying, when I was there originally, in 95, there was a large Russian population. There were people here who were from the Ukraine. It really just changes depending on what's happening in the world. One of the things that I think is beautiful is, again, what does it look like to live in a society that's based on Jewish values? There is a quote up there that says, "Do not forsake me when I grow old, when my strength fails, do not abandon me." You can imagine that is exactly what this was a way of our living our values in a very beautiful way.
I just want to say one word about the United States, because here in Kettering, Ohio, we do have Rosewood Art Centers. We have many art centers. They do go a step deeper, and we do those things. Just saying, Jennifer.
Absolutely, we can make a difference no matter where we are, for sure. As I said, we stopped at Capitol Hill. Over here, you see, as she said, a very famous menorah. We have a lovely couple over here in front of the Knesset. We have an example of democracy at work with some protests. Does anyone remember what they were protesting?
Wages.
Wages. You want to?
I don't remember specifically, but there was a workers' rights issue.
Yeah. We went to Har Herzl, which was the military cemetery right there. That's Herzl's grave. As you can see, they have lots of visitors. And over here is Hannah Senesh. I don't know if any of you remember her. Eli, Eli, Yesh Kochavim. Those are poems that have been set to music that she had written. And you can see on here, they put down the different units that someone works in, or that they, as the military. All of the graves, for those that are not obviously the heads of state, are all the same. Whenever you look, especially last week for the Israel Memorial Day, you can see all of the graves with people standing in front of them, and it's a beautiful tribute. Someone had wanted to share, and I want to say it was Jennifer. Did you want to say something about the military cemetery? About how, I think you had said that there's not a person who hadn't been touched.
Yes, so with the Independence Day of Israel being this week, we're talking a lot on Times of Israel about Memorial Day and how Memorial Day in Israel is much more culturally, it's more like observed and set aside. It's a day that's set aside rather than our Memorial Day that's coming up. this next month, we're gonna have barbecues and we're gonna have furniture sales and closeout sales and car deals and stuff like that. They don't have that. It's a day that everything stops and they really observe the day in remembrance. And one of the things that I think is so important in that is they were saying that every single person in Israel, whether Jewish, Muslim, Christian, they all have been touched by either a loss from the military or a loss from a terrorist attack. There is not a single person in that country that hasn't been touched by that. And I found that really impactful to hear because, I mean, I have military in my family, but it's still like, no one died in war or anything like that, and it still feels separate from me. I mean, I was impacted by it, yes, but not in the same way that it's impactful there, and I just found that really incredible. And I think it's gonna make me look at our Memorial Day a little differently this year.
Beautifully said. Over here, this was memorial for Yitzhak Rabbi, and you can see it's a very different artistic presentation than the others that we saw, like with Herzl, based on the tragedy of his assassination. We had the opportunity to sort of look over the city, see some of, I believe there were bullet holes in was it the post office that was right across that turned into, it had used to be the mayor's office. Again, you have antiquity, the beginning of the state and modern Israel all sort of wrapped up in the same community. We went to Machane Yehuda. As you can see, it's a lot of fun, outdoor market. Reuben Kazan, who gave us a great lesson on the situation in Israel. And again, this is the military cemetery where you can see each of those looks the same, but they're cared after and really hold great meaning for the people who come. I know, Skip, you had really liked the professor. Did you want to say anything about that?
No, I don't think it's done.
Okay. Was there anyone else who wanted to say something? Ellen.
It wasn't exactly his subject, but I asked him to explain how their politics work. I mean, how Netanyahu became the leader. He broke it down so easy for me to understand, and I really appreciated it, and now I know why certain things are the way they are. Yeah, it's a coalition.
Right, coalition government, very different. The next day was a really powerful day. I was going to say, I know the last time we went, Richard, this is one of the most powerful experiences that you had had. I was a little terrified at a certain point with last time, but that is nothing compared to this time, unfortunately. So we joined with Women of the Wall. How many of you have heard of Women of the Wall? Good, but I'm doing my job. How many of you have never heard of it? I owe you a conversation. So Women of the Wall, they have been, as it says, struggling with religious freedom. The Wall is a place that is not owned by anyone in particular, but it is being monitored by the Orthodox community. And so the women's section and the men's section have always been separated. And even though it is not illegal to have someone come in and bring a Torah into that space, they won't allow you to, even if you have the right. So MK Gilad Karib had tried to come in the month before with a Torah, and it was confiscated. We found that there were two different sections of people being let in, and those of us who were there with Women of the Wall were being scrutinized very thoroughly with them searching through everything we had, taking off our jackets, while the Orthodox next to us were going straight through. Because they were concerned about them bringing in a Torah scroll and bringing in anything that might, again, in their opinion, profane the sanctity of that space. Every month is Rosh Chodesh festival, essentially, which is when we welcome in the new moon, and it's considered a woman's holiday. there's an explanation that it's because the women didn't willingly give over their gold when they were building the golden calf, and this was our reward. So that's when we would go and want to sing our songs of praise and to be able to read from the Torah, especially as women. And so every month, these women have been going and trying to do this. I will tell you a little bit more about that as we get to the pictures. We then went to the Western Wall ourselves, went through the tunnels, and then finished the day with Yad Vashem. It was really important, I thought, that we ended the day with Yad Vashem, because the day started out really difficult, because there was such a dichotomy between those who are from the pluralistic community, who really want to have an egalitarian space, and the ultra-Orthodox. And then we took the time to visit Yad Vashem and remember that we are all Jewish and that we're all in this together. And as much as we are separate when it comes to these issues, we are still together. We're still one community, and the importance of remembering that and being able to come together with people around us who were ultra-Orthodox to secular, being able to mourn and grieve and remember the Holocaust and think about how we want to make Israel a place for everyone as a safety was sort of a powerful way to end the day. Some really cool things happened. So first of all, there's the direction to the Western Wall. That's how you spell Kotel, if anyone's curious. The woman up there, that's Anat Hoffman. She has been the woman to lead this effort for many, many years. That is our own Carol Graff, who had a very special experience, and I'll have her tell us about it in a little bit. As you can see, it's a little bit crowded. Do you see how busy it is there? I'm going to show you on the next screen what it's normally like, because this is not normal. One of the things that you'll notice, at least over here, this is a picture of one of the guards who's there to protect us. And around us were people who were building a circle around us to try and keep us from coming in with them. As you can see, they have their own prayer books, and this is when they have their Torah reading. They weren't able to bring in the scroll, but they were able just to bring a parchment, and that is their signature talit. Some of you have that from when Leslie had come a few years ago to speak about it. So they don't want us to gather, because part of this is they don't want to hear women's voices in prayer. And so one of the things that started when we went there in 2019, this was the first time if I remember when we were there, that they had these speakers that they set up. They're like, what is this? They were pointed towards us from the men's section, drowning us out. And people were whistling so that they couldn't hear our voices. Yeah, and so these women, the young girls, were being shipped in from Orthodox day schools to go into the women's side and try to keep us from joining together. In the past, they've had issues with people ripping the prayer books and burning the prayer books as well. Yeah.
You may be planning on speaking to this. I'm curious what the contrast this year and past was, because as you said, the level of harassment was probably the lead back in 2000.
Level of absolute harassment in 2019 was hard to believe. Speakers, women, children were all doing everything they could to drown out what was going on. There was a reform rabbi that came down to, I guess, try to calm things, and he was chased out of the complex by the ultra-Orthodoxes. I'm just curious, maybe you've already answered it, what the level of experience this year was compared to that.
We will definitely be getting there. Go ahead, Jan.
I think so.
Can you hear me? So it was interesting on the women's side. First of all, the noise coming from the speaker were so loud that you couldn't think, and that was by design. And the number of young girls brought in from the day schools was just unbelievable. And they were just trying to follow what the men were doing on the other side to undermine what we were doing. But one thing that was very interesting to me was that in the center on the women's side where they were conducting the service, there were law enforcement women in uniform facing us between the women conducting the service and the wall, but not facing the wall, and it wasn't clear who they were there to protect. I did not feel any safer having them there than if they hadn't been there. It was very uncomfortable, I think. And then, did someone want to talk about as we were leaving when they sort of menaced us?
We're gonna get there.
Okay.
I was about to say, I thought you were gonna mention the curses that they were doing as we were walking out. I mean, it was horrible. Is that what you're talking about, or the?
Yeah, when they kind of surrounded us and were shouting curses at us.
Right, when the women who all walk out, they all walk out together as the police are trying to at least give them an out to walk through the gates. The reason I was so upset last time was I was worried that I left my phone there and I just was checking in my bag and I turned around and they shut the door already. And it had me and Suzanne on the other side of the door, all these ultra-Orthodox banging on the door at the women who had just gone past, and here we were right in the middle of them until finally we were able to get them to let us go out. But I really was afraid. But this time, as we were leaving the plaza, they were screaming curses such as, "We hope you get the worst type of cancer and die."
Oh my God. Well, you're disgusting.
Yeah, you're disgusting, yeah. A lot of things like that. What you see here, again, you can see how busy this plaza is. If you look closely up there, this woman is giving us the finger. They're staring, but you can see they're making a circle around us as much as they can to try to let us not be together. Over here, up there, because you can see there's a speaker that they put up. Those have been every time now since 2018. There was whistling. Above us this is like, it has tin on it. It's the walkway up to the top of Temple Mount. People were banging on it. It was really loud. Again, I could hardly hear the people next to me. One of the things that one of the congregations in the United States has done is they are funding a choir so that they have professional musicians, professional voices, be able to sing the prayers, I believe using microphone themselves, to be able to augment the voices so that they could be heard just by us. And even with that, it was hard to hear them. But I love that the cantors, I believe it's the cantors assembly at this point, it started from one congregation, but I think the whole cantors assembly sends some money to pay for that every month. Yeah.
What did the men in your church do while you were at the women in the wall?
Thank you. I was going to mention that before when Richard spoke. So one of the things that Richard made reference to said there was a man who came down who was a rabbi who was trying to sort of settle the situation, because for them watching this, they couldn't be on our side because men and women can't be together. But they were able to hopefully try to create a little bit of peace if possible for those who were sort of behind the lines, watching this go down and cursing from out there. Do you want to add to that? In our group, we were mostly female. Jonah, I believe, went with Mookie during that time. Skip, were you with Mookie too?
We were in Mookie, we stayed up above the railing. Well, I've been to the wall before, so I didn't want to fight too close.
Yeah.
So women, only women allowed in that area where they're praying?
Yes.
Men can't go in.
Men cannot go there.
And we can't go on the men's side either.
Right. We've been working to try to make an egalitarian space for a very long time. There is, what? Yeah. So this is where women were waiting. This is sort of the end of the plaza area. This is the partition between the men's side and the women's side. And again, on the men's side, that's where you see the speakers coming over, and that's between the wall and the other side. I can tell you that if you were able to see the entire picture, the women's side is far smaller than the men's side.
The other thing I want to mention is the women were not all reformed women. I think, we're so biased here at our temple that, of course, reformed women support the law. There were Orthodox women, ultra-Orthodox women, well, a woman right there with phylacteries. So it's the whole range of Judaism represented by women at the wall.
Yes, there are Orthodox women who believe in this egalitarianism, who are part of the women of the wall. It's not just the progressive movement versus the rest of the world. An excellent point.
And several of us could not break locked elbows of the young girls that were there until one of the women of the wall, actually she's behind me with gray hair in the top, one of the top pictures. Anyway, she said, no, you have to ask, do you want to come in? And I said, yes. And then she said, okay, since you said you want to come in, I will go ask a guard to allow you to come in. And the guard came over and asked the girls to break their lock. But it was pretty awful. It really was.
You can see Sarah wearing her kippah from Yad Kashish. This is us sort of in the middle. There's a police officer sort of, again, trying to guard us, but these are all Orthodox young women who've come in specifically for the occasion.
Karen?
Yeah.
When we were there in 19, they were able to smuggle in a Torah, and of course, everybody yelled and screamed, and we said, since, I guess, I don't understand why the Orthodox got so excited, because if it were this time that the women weren't able to smuggle in a Torah, then I don't understand why they still treated your group this time as badly as we were treated when we had the Torah. It doesn't make sense. If women can gather but not have a Torah, then they shouldn't have acted like that.
So they had a cloth, which is one of the sheets from a Torah, that specifically had that Torah portion on it. And again, the idea of women reading Torah in general is not something that is
not a Torah, it's not just
it's still a sacred text and reading it out loud and chanting it. So this was really, yeah.
It sounds like things have gotten worse in the last 4 years. Would you agree?
I would definitely agree. I felt that the numbers were larger. The level of animosity, the fact that last time I at least felt comfortable getting to where I got locked out, I didn't feel comfortable even on that walk, getting there. Really, it was really hard for me. Every time I go to the wall, it's harder and harder for me because I have to say I have a lot of bad memories from there. Starting first from the assassination of Rabbi, and when I went to the wall following that and saw people celebrating. So I continue to have negative experiences, but again, we are Klal Yisrael, we are the Jewish people, and we have things that bring us together more than separate us, and it's important for us to try to find ways to work together and not come away as upset. But I will tell you, and Jonah, I'm sorry for using you as an example, but one of the things that happened that broke my heart was that when he went through the Western Wall Tunnel, he asked me, where does this come up? Do we come up in the Orthodox section? And I said, no, we end up in the Muslim section. He said, oh, thank goodness. That was a relief to him because he was more afraid of being in the Orthodox section. And that really was not my intention of this trip. So you have to be careful. We want to bring people here so that we understand what's going on and that we need to be able to raise our voices and fight. At the same time, I don't want to turn anyone away from the love of Israel that I have because this is still my space. I just have to go in and claim it. Yeah.
Rabbi, if you were not going on Rosh Chodesh, there probably wouldn't be as much difficulty attending?
Correct.
Okay.
So I took these pictures on Shabbat, and they will come to be significant. This is where the men were standing up on the railing looking out of the women's section. You can see it's not very well attended. They've even got room for chairs. Over here's the men's section. That's what it looks like on the other side. Again, not nearly as crowded as you saw in the other pictures. You can see a little bit of the difference between the men's and the women's side, but not really because it doesn't show you how much bigger it is really. But this is the security that we came in through, and I can tell you that the following month, the CCAR convention, the rabbinic community came for Rosh Chodesh, and I mean, it took them forever to be able to get through that line. It was terrible. Very different in how they were treating the progressive community and wanting to make sure that they were searched. I took these two pictures up here to fill in a little bit of details on an incident that happened after. There's an incident that started up here, even before here. This is the security section. We go down to the wall, to this area right down there. They tell us, welcome to the Western Wall, the remnant of the Jewish temple and the place where the divine presence rests. Please respect this site and those worshiping here and abide by the site's regulations. Sounds so easy, right? But this is one security point. We had an incident that started further up and continued here down these stairs that was far more personal than some of these others. This one, though, is the most significant of all of our moments. And again, let's focus on the really positive things, the beautiful moments. What extended, like, I can't even imagine. The Women of the Wall offer different aliyot to people who are celebrating. The woman who had the aliyah right before Carol did was celebrating because after 9 years, she was finally celebrating the first year of a child after many failed pregnancies. And so, really people who were celebrating blessings. And I think that they were really moved to have Carol in our group because Carol was probably the oldest woman in our group. And they wanted to bless her and wish her blessing and have her do the Torah blessings. And Carol knew them. She said, I didn't even have to look at the book because we do them every Friday, and she's here. But again, this was really incredible. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to take the.
It was a very moving moment. I had been at the wall many, many decades ago. And it wasn't more crowded, it was different. And the chaos. And I did watch the young women, the students. They all had prayer books and they all prayed. And I could follow it along. But we had our own prayer books. And it really surprised me when this woman asked me if I wanted to do it. And I realized it's because of gray hair, which has great value every once in a while. I had both my daughters with me. One had been, one had not. And my daughter said it was the most moving moment that she had in Israel. But when they called me up and asked me if I would want to do it, I said, fine. And she said, and I'll help you if you want, which I practice every week so I can do the prayers. And it was very moving for me. Afterwards, after the music was amazing. I kept thinking, my goodness, we don't have this kind of music in our services. All these women, everyone could sing so beautifully. Why would all the voices in Israel are not here at Temple Israel? And we have one really great one, right? We have afterwards, the service was over. There was an Orthodox woman who was, I think, from one of the British countries, because she had a British accent, asked me, why are you doing this? I thought it was really rude of her to even to ask. And I just think, this is what we do. My sons were bar mitzvah, my daughters were bat mitzvah, I was bat mitzvah, and we participate equally. And she gave me a funny look. I didn't have any trouble. Maybe the gray hair makes a difference. I wasn't harassed coming in. I didn't have the harassment going out. So age must have some value.
You also weren't wearing a kippah. So you also
I
weren't
was
wearing a
not
kippah.
wearing a kippah. I did not put it on that day because my girls didn't choose to put it on, so I wasn't gonna do it myself. But it was a very moving moment among this chaos. That was ultra chaos. It was just not a religious experience when you have these chaotic anti-religious things going on.
One of my favorite things that I saw in here was within the prayer book, this prayer for women of the wall. I don't know if you can read it very well at all. And for our sisters, all the women and girls of your people Israel, let us merit to see the joy, hear the voices raised before you in song and praise. May no woman or girl will be silenced ever again among your people Israel or in all the world. God of justice of your name and the repair of, let us merit to see justice and salvation soon for the sanctification of your name, the repair of the world. As it is written, Zion will hear and be glad, and the daughters of Judah rejoice over your judgments, O God. And it is written, for Zion's sake, I will not be still, and for Jerusalem's sake, I will not be silent, until her righteousness shines forth like a great light, and her salvation like a flaming torch. For Torah shall go forth from Zion, and the word of God from Jerusalem. Amen. Of course, it was right in here. So for those of you who weren't following along, just a reminder what it said. Marcia, you wrote this as well, talking about Emma Hoffman. We had the opportunity to go afterwards for probably about 45 minutes or an hour to a special room where we were able to hear from her directly and to talk about her, the fight that they have in Israel. And she's been sent to jail. Her experiences have been, she's been arrested several times. She's been on the news. I'm sure if you look up Anat Hoffman, you will find her. I was wearing a shirt that says I stand with women on the wall, which was something that I had gotten when one of their ambassadors, Leslie, had been with us last. That shirt kind of got me in a little trouble a little bit later. As you can see, Marcia added a lot. One of the things she spoke was gratitude for support from the United States. So as I mentioned, it's really hard when you bring a group of people to the wall and you see this type of activity on Rosh Chodesh. Many congregations avoid Rosh Chodesh specifically because they don't want, during a difficult time with relationships between Americans and Israel, to fuel any fires of anyone wanting to feel discomfort about Israel and about the ultra-Orthodox and the Jewish community as a whole. And so it's not the norm for us to be planning trips like we have this one and the last one around this experience. So I think she was really appreciative. It wasn't a huge group of people. The next month when CCAR was there, they had 200 women who were there, and many men. It was a very different experience, but they don't always have big numbers. And so they really felt our support, and you can support them from here. You can find out and follow them. And every month at midnight on Rosh Chodesh, it's Israel, 7 o'clock in the morning. You can watch it live, and actually our whole service and Carol's Aliyah is all on their Facebook page under their videos, and you can watch it live and record it from the past. So I wanted to let Anat know that something had happened when we were leaving from meeting with her to go back to the Western Wall. This was, again, about an hour or so after everything had happened, and most people had cleared out from the community as far as it wasn't chaotic anymore. I had my fleece on, but I also had my shirt showing through that I hadn't been thinking about. We were walking, and there was an incident with an ultra-Orthodox community, a couple of boys. And I'd written to her because I didn't want for someone to say there was an incident here last week because we had gotten the police involved and her not to be aware. So I explained it to her that what happened, there were people who saw this shirt and my kippah, and Sarah Carpenter was wearing a kippah, a few others were too, and they said, we don't want you here, go back, leave, don't ruin us, like don't, we don't want you here. And then they sort of, like ran over, held their arms and were not letting us pass to go towards the area to even go through security. And it turned out there was almost a fist fight. And one of the young men was in arms like this, trying to get one of our people to hit him. And so knowing how much they hate being touched by women, I grabbed his arm. And I did that intentionally. I mean, and I held him there and told him, this is an older gentleman. We do not behave this way. This is, and eventually, Yuki got the police to come. Well, we thought that was going to be helpful, right? Except once they found out what happened, they let him go. So when we got through security, he was waiting for us on those stairs that you saw before. Again, come at me, and trying to fight one of our community members. And again, we had to get the police, but they did not take it seriously enough to even detain him long enough for us to get through, for there to be safety on the other side. And
I want to say also that he didn't just say, we don't want you here. He really was slurring our wonderful rabbi. And it hurt every single one of us to hear this young boy who had to have been indoctrinated from birth to slander our rabbi and to say these horrible things and to be physically abusive.
Unfortunately, you're not told me, it's certainly not surprising confrontation some of you had, but I guess this happens a lot. So, when you asked it before what made it a little bit different and more frightening, this was definitely it. To be physically barred from trying to go, not even to the wall, but to the security to let me down to the wall.
So Rabbi, on the next trip to Israel, we can still continue to go?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I would probably be a little bit more hesitant to wear my shirt. Jonah made me promise I would never wear it again. It really was very frightening. Jonah, would you agree? That was probably the scariest moment you had on the trip. And that's having experienced or been face to face with being on the Gaza Strip. We then went down to the tunnels. This is the entrance gate. You can see how big everything is. This shows you what the Temple Mount had been. This is where the Western Wall is today. So as big as that is nothing compared to what the Temple Mount used to be. It is such an enormous thing. There were cisterns underneath. You can see how tall and how far this goes. We're looking down beneath, right? You can see again just how big it is. And Nuki's showing us some of the entrances that were there, and that there are different types of stones based on the time period in which it had been added. He was telling us also how they were able to make sure that things didn't crumble, because they had used a lot of really smart science even before they had it. This is looking down to see just how far the excavations go. Several stories, it looks like. This is the archway, one of those entrances that you saw before. Again, you can see Nuki, it was enormous. Jonah's pointing out how far away the larger stones were. And I think these were to help them move them, right? Or was that that wasn't for the candles, that was in the other place. This was to help them move the blocks, I think, at one point. But we went underneath it. Fortunately for Jonah, we went out into the Muslim community at the Muslim border. This right here, it says you are entering the point closest to the site of the Holy of Holies. And so that is an area that there were little sanctuaries down there. A lot of women will go there and pray and recite Tehillim or the Psalms. So not only was it just excavations, but it had, again, places for people to really experience this connection to being the closest site to the Holy of Holies. And the water cistern below, there were baths that needed to be there for people to be cleansed or for them to go up to the temple, collections of water. It was very informative. Well, I don't know.
Just a word about the former pictures. We weren't able to put our prayers in the wall for the women of the wall, obviously because we were blocked from even approaching the wall itself.
I made it there.
I did too. I'm tall.
Yeah. I had, part of that was me, I encouraged you not to go outside of our group because I didn't want you to leave the protection of whatever little protection we had. So that's why we didn't go down there. But yes, as I said, we'll have an opportunity when we go down below and you can put it in the wall down there. So here is a regular day, when this was the day that we were there on the wall. Couple of really cool things. We went to the Armenian quarter. Mookie, because he's awesome, was able to take his little Tanakh out and be able to read parts of the Bible and tell us what we were looking at. This was the broad wall. It shows us here some of the different iterations of the old city over time. Everything old was mixed in with the new. That didn't happen. Oh, I know why. So this is Yad Vashem, day 6, and I realized I had no pictures because they don't allow you to take any pictures at Yad Vashem. But it was important for us to go to the Holocaust Museum, and we were especially thankful that we had 2 different courses, one for people who had been and one for people who had never been, so that people had new experiences even if they'd gone. Then we headed to the south. I'm trying to go a little faster, sorry. We've got the Ella Valley, again, that's where David and Goliath had their standoff. We went to the Beit Guvri caves, where Jonah led us in uncovering all of the pottery from the Hellenistic period that was 2,300 years before. We were able to take some pottery shards at the end with us that they said they had already looked at to see that they weren't significant parts of any type of pottery, so we were able to take some of that home with us, which was pretty cool. And then we went and spoke to a woman, Chen Kotler Abrahams, from Kibbutz Aza, or Kfar Aza, which is right on the border of the Gaza Strip. This is looking out of the Ella Valley. These are us on the ground digging through there are hundreds of these caves. We were just looking at one and it had a lot more work to do. They depend on groups like us coming in and little by little getting through the different layers. And we found different cool things. Jonah, you found, I think, was it a fish bone? Or some sort of a bone? He kept finding things. The rest of us, Jonah, we made this big hole, a 3-foot hole, yeah. He really enjoyed that. You can see afterwards, even after we thought that we had collected just the stuff that was important, we then sifted it again to find those important things. You found what? You found an important one. Do you want to tell us what that was? An edge of a.
It was like the edge of a pot.
Yeah, in archaeology, if you find just the outside of the pot, it's not as significant, but you can tell the time period and the way things were crafted by the way that the tops are done in the bottoms. And so he found one of the lips of it that was significant. Cool. One of the things that made me want to go to this place is that it makes things come alive when it comes to biblical things. So when we hear about, like the oil presses and making wine, we really wanted to see what that looked like. And so this is an oil press. Sort of shows you the mechanics of it over here. First they start by running it through and it's just mashed. It goes through a process where there are different presses. It goes underneath and they press it. Underneath where the presses are, that's where they collect the oil. And so the first press is, of course, the most valuable. That was the one that they would use for, I want to say for holy endeavors, if you will, for the temple use. And each time they pressed it, it gets a little bit lighter every time. So the concentration is less. But it was pretty cool. I know, Joey, you tried to push that, didn't get very far at all. It was a good try. Then went over to Kfar Aza, and first we went to Sderot, where I saw this all around. We were reminded of the dangerous community that surrounds them. They are missing still these 3 young men whose bodies, I believe, are in Gaza. When we were here, we saw on her kibbutz, which was absolutely lovely. I think everyone said that might have been their favorite place. Like, it was just so idyllic. It was just beautiful. This is an example of a bunker. Every building in Israel has to have a safe space. And this is something that was donated by some of the community from the diaspora. You might think, how is it that we can help? Every little bit helps. In this case, it's helping them provide security. So Ken was telling us that the last time, I think, was December, that they had to go into any of those safe rooms. And she had shown us a number of different missiles and incendiary devices that had been sent over there. Obviously, that was a very scary thing.
I just want to comment.
Please, use your microphone.
When she mentioned they had 10 seconds alert when a rocket went off to get into these bunkers. I mean, I can't move anywhere in 10 seconds. It's amazing.
Yeah, 10 seconds, more or less, to get a bomb shelter when the sirens go off. As you can see, this is one of the gates of the Gaza border. To see how close it is, I used to find my friends. Jonah is right here, and it's not very far. It might look far, but there's a little road that we took, and then we went right next to the border. But it's all part of the kibbutz next to it. And here we were standing on that gate, looking in over here, and we were able to see some of the Hamas lookout sites from there as well. This is, on our way back, we went on a road that took us past the IDF ground training center, where they have like simulated villages, where they practice going in for when they're under attack. But these were a bunch of tanks all lined up there. We then went down to Stavoker, and Marcia said that it was the edge of the world, right? You said wandering and wonderment. She says, the beautiful part reminds me of the days when Israel was just emerging as a modern independent state, led by David Ben-Gurion, its first prime minister and statesman. And then you said, and I appreciated this image is reinforced with the arrival of new recruits learning about their nation's history. You can see that there are some soldiers over there. These are the graves for the Ben-Gurions. For David and Ben-Gurion, who was his wife? I'm trying to, Paula, yes. This is looking out over Ein Avdat, which is a national park. You can see how beautiful that is. I remember one of the years I was there, we did a whole day hike in there. It was really gorgeous. This is the center that they have. Marcia says, as the sun sets, we understand the attraction of this reverent retreat for the Zionist, the founder of the nation of Israel. And she loved the imagery of the sun, so I put it up there, and we had Jonah up there, who was our ibex, because we kept finding ibexes, and we kept finding Jonah in all the places we might find ibex. The next day we went to Nakatish Ramon, which is the Ramon crater, which, as it says, it's the world's largest erosion crater. Amazing, you'll see in some of these pictures. We went down into it on jeeps. We then went to Hamid Sarah, which is black basalt rocks. Very interesting formation. You'll have to see in the picture. Went to the visitor center, again, that was looking at the Ilan Ramon Memorial, just so that you're not confused. Mitzpeh Ramon is not related to Ilan Ramon. We then went out in the evening and went stargazing. So you can see a little bit about the different types of rocks that we have. Acacia trees out in the middle of nowhere. When you're thinking about the desert, it's really hard to imagine what would keep a plant like that sustained. You can see just how treacherous it was to get down there by the road. Yeah.
That tree is on almost all maps.
I was gonna say, you guys found some ibex wandering around the hotel. I loved that there were different types of rocks there. I was just pulling different ones that I thought were cool. Some more ibex. Again, looking out over the Malteche. I'm assuming, Richard, we didn't see anything like this. No, very different part of the land. You can see here a little bit about the geological processes going back as many as 230 million years ago. Pretty incredible. And of course, Marcia says that they made a beautiful backdrop for our picture. We also saw fossilized, I forget what those were called, but crustacean, what were they? A nautilus, okay. I believe you. And this is where we went to the Mitzvah. These were, was it like a hexagon? It almost looked like if you take a pack of pencils and you cut off the top, and you see how they all fit in like that, that's how they were all up there. It was really an incredible type of, I don't even know what to call it, but basalt rocks, I guess. We went out stargazing. That was a great picture Jonah took through his phone, through the lens of the telescopes that we're using. If you were closer, you could see so many of the stars because there's none of the light pollution in the middle of
And I just want to say that the picture that I sent Rabbi next to, they went stargazing and I went to my grandson's adoption ceremony in the middle of the desert. I'm in the middle of the desert, going to an adoption and seeing all of my family because we were all outside. Incredible, very cool.
We then went down, yeah.
I just want to say, the guys who took us down in the Jeeps and did the stargazing were not a bunch of yahoos. They were exceptionally intelligent and well-educated, and they were very good at sharing what they knew about the environment, about the stars, everything.
We're gonna go first to Kibbutz Lotan, and then we stopped for Kibbutz Yotata. So we ended up seeing 3 different types of kibbutzim, all of them very different. One was, of course, the dairy, one was the Ego Kibbutz, and the other was Kfar Aza that was right on that border. And then we went to Timna Park. You'll see some pictures over here. All of these things that make a playground were out of recycled things. So you can't really tell that these benches were made out of tires that had been plastered over. Over here, you can see how they did that when they filled the tires with like bottles and other types of things that covered them. I was just showing Sammy Albert has been working on with some eco stuff, and she was so excited when I showed her that what they call the fart machine that has it creates gas that you can use, I believe, for energy. The entire kibbutz is based on sustainability. Yeah. Do you want to add anything? What this is, you can't see it, but it says it's moringa, right? Moringa. And Vicki, do you remember what the healing properties were of that? It's considered the tree of life.
It's smarter, so that's what.
This is smart, yeah. I know you found some that makes great tea, but it's one of those 100% natural, wonderful superfoods. We then went to Timna, and well, that's Yotata. One of the things that they're known for is their chocolate milk, that they had the opportunity to climb. And you can see how red the earth is. Again, this is where they mined copper for the first time during the Second Temple period. In a lot, that was more of a vacation, I think. We had the opportunity to go to an underwater observatory. A lot is well known around the world for anyone who's into scuba diving and looking at various reefs because of how beautiful it is. So you'll see a little bit of that. We then went on a cruise on the Red Sea, which was really fabulous. This is where we were staying, looking out over there, the mountains, that's Jordan. We were over here, again, Nikki was talking a little bit about the establishment of the state and the Israeli flag that was put there. I was aside from the group at that point, so if anyone wants to add to that, exactly what that was, I'll have to look that up.
I just want to add, when we were on the boat, we were surrounded with the lot behind us and Aqaba on one side and Saudi Arabia and Egypt. And I just thought it was the coolest thing.
Super cool. We then went across the Yitzhak Rabin border crossing to Petra. On that day, we got to, Jonah, your favorite thing, if I remember, was, so it's a different time zone from one side to the other side of the border. So I think they opened at like 8 o'clock, but they were coming out of Jordan because it was an hour later when we were there. We couldn't go in yet. It was a lot of walking, as Richard said. I think that his brother did need some knee surgery following the last time he went. This is what they call the treasury. All of this is part of the Nabatean trade route. And this was a hidden city that was essentially carved into the rock. You can only imagine if you made a mistake. But when I was there many, many years ago, last time I was there, I think it was in '97, this was all open. You could climb in and walk around in there. Now they found that there are coffins, I believe, in front of it, so they won't let you near it, but they're excavating it more. A mosque, a beautiful example of what the top of it looks like when you're not in the middle of it. Many different gifts that are being sold. I remember the first time I was there, I carried a whole backpack of those eggs that I took back to the United States. They did not have weight limits at that time on our luggage. Again, this is sort of a backdrop. Anytime you have the opportunity to have a camel in a picture, I think you should. We then went back from Eilat to Tel Aviv. We went to the Paris Peace Center, which was the innovation center looking at what makes Israel a startup innovative nation. Really taking us from the past to the future in many ways. We looked out at Jaffa and had a farewell dinner. So here we are going on to our cute little plane. We had a lot of fun. There were a lot of times that those people over there were playing cards and a good time was had by all. These were some pictures.
Those are like the daughters that Jonah was playing.
Yes, the graph girls were pretty awesome. You can see different parts. This is, I believe, a kibbutz. Over there is Jordan. This is still within Israel. And again, coming over some of the more populated and into Tel Aviv areas. It's always fun because you don't get to see those views when you are on the bigger planes coming in. And over here, we had an opportunity to see about the first settlers of Tel Aviv. Muki took us on his own, again, how wonderful he is. We had a few extra minutes. He wanted us to be able to make the most of it. So here are the first people who settled. They had a lottery as to what land they were going to have. The land was entirely sand dunes. They had to level out all the sand dunes in order to build on top of it. And here's the first planned community that they had with their little lots that they had drawn, and information on the history of how that came to be. Here we have the Innovation Museum. A couple things that I really liked. Copaxone, that's one of the drugs that my mom has used before for multiple sclerosis. That was created in Israel. Rummy Cube, how many of you like Rummy Cube? Again, an Israeli invention, we knew. I think we have to have a Rummy Cube night at Temple. And of course, this is the food spread that we had at our final meal. You just have no idea how much food there is, that I will show you in a second. We went to see Jaffa, looking out over Tel Aviv. This is the older part of the city. This is Muki telling us goodbye.
He's glad to see us go.
He looks so much happier than when he says hello, right? No. And this is how we ate our way through the country. This is the final thing. Some of my favorite things. Safla, which is, I believe it's an Arab drink that's made out of flowers, and I forget which flower. It's a hot drink. Hot tea with nana, which is their spearmint leaves that they have. This is again, actually different dinner from the one you saw. This is what happens when they say, do you want the sandwich or do you want the platter? And you're like, well, which is it? And they tell you, oh, let me get the platter. We got the platter. Look what we got. It was absolutely ridiculous. I believe that was supposed to be for shawarma. So that was a lot. Interesting types of food, a pizza restaurant. How many of you have ever had a hard-boiled egg on your pizza? Not me. Jonah's very first shawarma, he got hooked. My favorite coffee from Aroma. You've probably seen Aroma here now in the United States. They serve it to you with a piece of chocolate to put inside it, and it melts, right? Delicious. Marzipan rugula from the Shuk. My first falafel. Jonah's drinking some chocolate milk out of a bag. That's one of the things that Yokotai is known for. For years, that's how they would serve milks, like we have our little container boxes. They would have little bags. Again, lots of nuts and fruits that are dried. Israeli treats like bamba, which is a peanut butter snack. So they often have less numbers of people with allergies there because a lot of the kids eat that when they're little. And even things that you think look normal, a little bit different. So here you see in the Arabic, the Lay's, it's French cheese flavor. Good, it was good. I think that is finally the end. I'm so sorry for how long it's taken. Are there thoughts that you guys have not had an opportunity to share, that you'd like to share, and questions that need to be answered? Even as long as it's been.
I would like to make a comment. Susan and I, it's been several years since we've been to Israel, and it seemed to have changed so much. Of course, all the historic things, the wall and all that is not going to change, but a lot of the museums you go to, they're now more interactive exhibits. There's more videos that are being shown, and it's a lot more of a learning experience than we've seen in the past.
I would never go with another guy when he was just absolutely.
I mentioned with Rabbi that I had been to the old Yad Vashem, and then we went to this new one. What I found of the original one, put it that way, was the impact of the artifacts they had, indicating the loss by country of individuals during the Holocaust. And that to me was missing in the new one. But what I did enjoy with the new one is the films and the activities. And one of the remarkable things that really struck me, I don't know about anyone else, is the fact that there was a troop of soldiers who were also going through the museum. And evidently, they have education days that require all the military to go through at some point in time.
It's a really good reminder for them of why their work is so important, what they're doing to protect the state. Others, anyone else?
I would like to say that being together as a group from Temple was really a family group, and we're continuing it, our experiences, the things we're involved in, getting together otherwise, and I miss our group that's not in Dayton. I know. And, wonderful trip, wonderful family trip.
One thing I think that from the experience I had, Skip, my husband, had been there a couple of times before or three, and it was my first trip. And what I found is, I found that the people there are like us. They're basically us. The language can be a barrier, but it doesn't have to be. They're willing to share with you. They're afraid. They react to change as we do. And it's not that we're bad people, or they're bad, they're not. They just become afraid at the change. And we have, which is an educational experience that we have to keep in mind, that we all don't have to be alike, that we have to embrace our likeness to one another and accept our differences. And I think that was the biggest thing that I learned from this, is that people are more like the different.
Any other questions? Well,
He's
thank
gonna
you.
have to address the
Yes.
Supreme Court thing later, sorry. I should say that that night that we were at Kfar Aza, if you saw there was a text back there that was since December, they had to go down into the bunker that morning at 3 a.m. because of an incoming. There were 3 missiles, 2 that got caught by Iron Dome and 1 that landed in an empty field near where we had lunch. One of the things I learned is that the Iron Dome goes in the areas that most need it. So when you're in a small kibbutz area, it's not always close to you. So whatever.
So Rabbi, were you wearing your kippah at the airport, like when you were checked by the security?
I don't
When they asked
remember.
questions and all that?
I don't remember.
So from your name, they couldn't tell you're a rabbi, right? Okay.
When I was at the wall, I don't, in Israel, that's the only place where I feel wearing a kippah is misleading sometimes. Or it leads me into conversations that I have to defend my Jewishness more than when I'm here. So sometimes I choose not to wear that if I don't want to engage in those conversations.
Yeah, and is there any dress code for women when we travel in Israel? Because I've been to Israel 4 times. I went alone all the time. But I just wore the big clothes and I got by. But is there a dress code generally for women?
At the wall, they want you to be mostly covered. But one of the things you can usually tell, at least when I was living there, is you always knew if it was a tourister because like they would wear shorts. Israelis just in general wear jeans or pants year round, no matter how hot it is. So there's not a dress code, but most of the time people have longer clothing.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your wonderful experience, and it sounds like it was a terrific trip, and thank you for sharing.
Thank you guys for being here. As always, we like to think ahead, so we'll be doing another one of these in a couple of years, probably starting back up north. If anyone is interested, start thinking about it and let me know. And